I was in high school. I was a sophomore in high school, and the last time Washington State had a Republican. It's been 40 years. That's how old I am. We've had 40 years of nonstop Democrat-run leadership. And it's run the state into the ground. Democrat progressive policy and ideology has literally run Washington State into the ground. Today's story is a direct example of what happens when you got too many social programs and then you start taxing everybody and people with money leave. Revenue forecast reveals $720 million gap as Governor Bob Ferguson eyes future budget challenges. I see some challenges ahead. It's not your overspending for the last 40 years and you've taxed so many businesses and individuals that they're leaving. It's not that? Oh, what is it? Oh, okay. Let's get into it. Here we go. Governor Bob Ferguson expressed concern. I have great concern that we're going to have to raise taxes again. Over the latest revenue forecast from Washington State Economic and Revenue Forecast Council Tuesday afternoon, the aforementioned revenue forecast predicts a $720 million decrease in revenue over the next 4 years compared to legislative budget assumptions. So as we go, these entities that are, the financial advisors, we're not looking good here, guys, because they can take current revenue coming in and recognize, the projections we had back then, a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, we've had some changes. We've had some change-ups happen. So, while this revenue, and here's Bob Ferguson's response. While this revenue forecast is disappointing, it is not surprising, Ferguson wrote in a statement. We know that things were unlikely to improve in the near term, especially in light of continued chaos from the Trump administration, including tariffs. You're going to blame Washington State's problems on tariffs. Are you kidding me? That is laughable at best. Laughable at best. It's not the last 40 years you effed up the economy. You're driving businesses out left and right. It's not that. Washington State is one of the worst states to start a business, and it's one of the least likely states a business can stay in business. It's got some of the most expensive gasoline in the country besides like Hawaii and California. But hey, let's go with Trump's tariffs because that makes no sense at all. And these are the shenanigans you have when you live under progressive Democrat rule, which is ideologically just hosed because they got to blame somebody. And you got 40 years of Democrat rule. So which have an outsized impact. We're trying to blame the tariffs on what's happening with Washington State, which have an outsized negative impact on a trade-dependent state like Washington. It ain't that, Bob. That's not it. Yeah, it is layers and layers and layers and layers of spending, government overregulation, just absolute nonsense. You've driven everything through the roof. Cost of everything has gone to the moon. And you're going to have to continually tax people to pay for all this absolute ridiculousness. Washington State spends about $900 million a year on the homeless industrial complex. And how's that working out? Well, since 2022, it's gone up 25%. Should we just spend some more money? Should we spend some more hundreds of millions of dollars? You know what? I think we blame homelessness on the Trump tariffs as well. Trump, oh man, that guy, orange man bad, right? Orange man bad. Although, you know what's really interesting? I'm not hearing anybody complain about, those attacks in Palestine anymore. The whole gays for Gaza thing, that's just all over, right? It's just done. Trump took care of that, didn't he? But so I don't hear you bitching about that one anymore. That's interesting. That one just kind of right off the media radar, didn't it? Yeah. Well, anyway, Ferguson continued to highlight the potential impact of federal policy. How about state policy there? How about state policy? What about the state policy shenanigans of just massive overspending? Got all kinds of programs we don't really need. We got support for this. We got support for that. We don't have support for cops. Don't have support for small business. Don't have support for public safety. But hey, let's blame it on the tariffs. Tariffs. Okay. It's particularly discouraging given the current efforts by the Trump administration to make draconian cuts to Medicaid, education, and food benefits. If those move forward, it will mean billions of dollars in cuts, impacting our most vulnerable residents. See, there he is, tearing at the heartstrings of unintelligent libtards. Because they go to, the poor. You know what? The poor are getting jacked around more than anybody else in the state of Washington because your taxation of everything, including state sales tax, damn near, 10%? Or is it over 10%? I lost track. It's gotten that high. Impacts those folks the most. Highest gasoline price in the nation impacts our poorest folks the most. So I don't want to hear about, impacting our most vulnerable residents. Progressive policy, progressive ideology has done that. And it's done at West Coast, Best Coast, Washington, Oregon, California, absolutely pile driving their poor into the ground with all the excessive costs and costs of living. I mean, just cost of housing alone. So he also acknowledged that the state's limitations in offsetting federal cuts, saying the forecast makes it abundantly clear that we as a state cannot replace all of those dollars. My team is analyzing the information in this forecast. At this time, I do not anticipate calling a special session. We're closely monitoring developments from the federal government. See, he's focusing on the federal government because can't blame internally, because that would mean, hey, Democrats, you guys have been leading us through the desert for 40 years. Literally 40 years, just like the Bible. Just like the Bible. And where's that getting us? Poor. Poor. Businesses leaving. Poor. Poor. So this will not be easy. We already made many difficult decisions on our last session in order to bridge our $16 billion shortfall because we spent too much money and our head is up our asses and we can't really work out how to reconcile revenue with spending because we're Democrats and that's not really what we do. Washingtons expect us leaders to make the tough decisions, to live within our means and still deliver care services. All right, I'll be curious to see what goes on. But you know what's going to happen? You got it. More taxes. More taxes. More taxes. Let's do more taxes. I say, F it. Let's just do taxes. Let's just tax everybody all the time for everything. And we'll call it a party. We'll call it a Washington State tax party. Why don't we do that? Governor Bob Ferguson signs $9 billion in new taxes, admitting concerns over the impact. We've always got concerns. You know, when the poor people we're talking about, those who live under the median income level by 60% or more, or whatever that metric is, you know what they have concerns with? Filling up their gas tank, because gas is damn near $5 a gallon. They have concerns when they go to the grocery store and it's effing expensive. That is, if their grocery store is open because they have a food desert, because you've allowed criminals to just roam around and steal stuff left and right, and you defunded the police in Seattle? Yeah, how'd that work out? How's that whole public safety thing going? Not all that great, right? Not all that great. Not all that great. And now you got a socialist mayor in Seattle. Good luck with that one. I mean, are you guys literally that stupid? And the answer is yes. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. People are just mental. It's like, what were you thinking there? How about this one? Washington State considers higher taxes on wealthy to address budget deficit. This is what we continually get, right? This was back in March, I think, and that's what they did. That's what they did. And what you're going to hear is all of these big, progressive, liberal states and even cities in some aspects, because you've got like Austin down in Texas, which is kind of a shit show. Relative to a Texas city, it's a shit show. You got some crazy homelessness going on there. You got a libtard mayor that's just like, doesn't want to deal with Greg Abbott, who just drops the hammer on stuff left and right. Just dropped the hammer on Muslims the other day. Yeah, you guys can't violate federal housing law and build your own Muslim community here with only Muslims in it. No can do. That's illegal. And Greg Abbott, I think yesterday, he made one of the Muslim organizations a criminal terrorist organization. Ah, interesting. Okay. Because they are. In his view, they're a terrorist organization. All right. And what you're seeing is in all of these cities, counties, states, whatever it might be, you've got progressive leadership that has overspent, and now those bills are coming due. And what they would normally go to as far as revenue sources are failing. The downtown cores are failing, causing massive, massive deficits in income they would normally have. Excise tax, no longer there. You've got buildings selling for 90% of their value 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Drops in revenue. There's, downtown Seattle, 33% of the buildings right now are currently vacant. All that tax revenue, not there. And Seattle, flagship for the state of Washington, all that revenue gone. Just boom, not there. Not there because of the way that we handled the pandemic. We're all going to go work from home. It's going to be socialist utopia. It's going to be the greatest thing ever. And then we realized, oh yeah, that doesn't really work because now your downtown core is hollowed out and you don't have those tax dollars coming in. So Washington state considers higher taxes on the wealthy. What do the wealthy do? What did Jeff Bezos just do? He left. Went to Florida, packed up his toys and said, F you guys, I'm out of here. Packed up his Lauren Sanchez and moved out of here, right? Just said, F you guys, I'm going to save myself $1 billion. Not going to be in Washington state. You know what Washington state leaders do? Well, I have concern about how we're going to make this go down the road. Going to have to tax the wealthy. Let's go Brandon Johnson, Chicago. Same exact damn deal. The guys all over the progressive revenue. Katie Wilson, our new socialist mayor of Seattle. We're going to have to go after progressive revenue, meaning taxing corporations. And what do? They leave. They leave Seattle, they come to Bellevue. They leave Seattle, they come to Bellevue. Because we're not taxing big corporations just because we have budgets that we can't continue spending all this money on. How many hundreds of millions of dollars has Seattle spent on homelessness? And homelessness has just gotten worse. Hundreds, billions of dollars. I don't get it. We should just spend some more. Let's just spend some more money and we'll make it worse. Because in the homeless industrial complex, when you build it, they will come. West Coast, Best Coast. Prime example of that. Washington State, Oregon, California, just, way over a third of the population, the homeless population in the entire country. The other 47 states, whatever you want to count it. It's phenomenal. The numbers are absolutely shockingly phenomenal. So these are the stories that you're going to hear. Here's a little video I want to play. This is a really good video. This is a business owner, this dude right here. He has I think some pretty direct things to say about the impacts of the new taxes. Let's hear what he has to say. Here we go.
State's new $9 billion tax package passed earlier this year by lawmakers in Olympia. OhmSpark is an online marketing company based out of Redmond. For the past 13 years, OhmSpark has tailored their services to small businesses to advertise and elevate their brand. Now the owner, Nikhil Singhal, says he's in the process of shutting down over B&O taxes going up and retail sales expanding to online digital ads.
I'm shutting down OhmSpark after 13 years of helping small businesses build their online presence. Washington State just passed $9.4 billion in new taxes in just 10 days with no small business input, no impact analysis, nothing. And when businesses like mine that make 5 to 8% profit, but
right there,
the taxes on every dollar that comes in, that's essentially basically 30% of my actual income. That's just evaporated. And these new sales tax and the bigger things about confusion about the rules and the new increases that I have read coming in 2027, the math simply just doesn't add up anymore for us to kind of continue doing this business.
And what was it about the specific sales tax? Is it that it was too much for you guys to handle, or was it just specifically because it was targeting a business like yours that didn't have to pay it before?
Yeah, the couple of changes. So I don't mind the sales tax. Well, that is a direct impact on my clients. As think, like this, that if you have if somebody's paying me $500 a month for their SEO, now I have to charge them $530 or something odd dollars now. So that's eating directly from their margins. Think about small businesses like restaurants or a mom and pop store. That's basically a hit. It's a dead by 1,000 paper cuts.
It's tough, it sounds like, for small businesses, some small businesses like yourself in this climate, correct?
Oh, it is actually really hard, right? Means if you think about it, this is a self-created crisis, in my opinion.
100%. This is a self-created crisis. This didn't have to happen. You are pushing out so many businesses with your overregulation and your overtaxation that now, who are you going to tax? Well, you're going to tax whomever's left. The middle class is going to take this right in the behind. Because after a while, all these businesses are going to leave. Wealthy people are going to leave. Who's going to be left? Well, those people with $2 million homes, but they can't spend that equity. They're stuck here. That's who's going to be impacted the most. And they're going to go, I have concern about how I'm going to continue living here. Who'd you vote for? Well, I voted Democrat because I'm a Washington resident and I always vote Democrat because it's working. Oh, wait a minute. The math isn't mathing. But let's just keep voting blue. That's what we do here in Washington. Just keep voting blue.
By the government, from increasing in terms of their budgets. And then they took just 10 days. Heck, people take more time to buy a car. State actually spend more time discussing. And then they took just 10 days. Heck, people take more time to buy a car. State actually spend more time discussing the state bird than they spend time discussing a $9 billion budget increase, a tax increase. Really, there was no input, nothing. And I'm not saying just for myself. Means I know for a fact, I attend a bunch of business meetings, like, networking meetings. And I know for a fact that there are over 600,000 plus businesses like mine who will going to suffer.
600,000?
600,000 plus businesses.
In the state of Washington, you think they're going to be feeling the impacts of this really hard?
They will be feeling the impact. I'm talking about small. I'm not talking about the Amazons or the Microsofts of the world, right? Those are a different beast.
So Forbes recently had a couple of reports. The best states to start a business and the worst states to try and keep a business running. Washington ranked numero uno in worst states to try and keep a business going, for businesses to keep going. And where do we rank in states with ranking of getting a business going? Where do we sit with that? Well, let's take a look. We are not dead last. Well, that's Vermont. And then you got New York, Mamdani. And then you got Washington, number 48 on the list of best states to start a small business in 2024. It used to be the opposite. Washington used to be just like Texas. Everybody was coming in. Hey, it's affordable. You got plenty of land to develop. You've got cheap everything. We got relatively cheap everything compared to California, because the demise in California had already begun. When I started my career as a real estate appraiser in my late teens, got my real estate license when I was 22, something like that. I mean, fairly young, right? We had droves after drove after drove of Californians coming into Washington State because we were so much more competitive than anything in California was. They'd come up here and go, I'll take 2. I'll take 3. And they started to really run the numbers here in Washington State. And then slowly over the years with all these Californians, and then Washington, the whole Oregon, keep it weird, Portland, keep it weird. We've got some of that here in Washington too. We're so far away from everything else And when you've got neighbors like Oregon and California, you start to think, wow, progressive ideology is the greatest concept ever. This is going to work. It's going to work. We just got to keep doubling down on it. And then it doesn't. And that's how you end up being 48th in the nation in best states to start a small business after having been, one of the top states for affordability, livability. Hey, everybody wants to move here. Cheap housing, great quality of life. All of that, crime we weren't defunding the police. You didn't have a bunch of nut jobs running around. You didn't, build a homeless industrial complex that is second to none. Right? West Coast has done that, and you built it, and they came, and they're here, and now you've got these libtards looking around going, what do we do? What do we do with all these mentally insane people that are whacked out of their mind on incredibly cheap drugs that are wildly, wildly destructive? Hence the fentanyl fold. What do we do? They don't know what to do, and they don't have a budget to cover it. So moving forward, what's going to happen? More taxation. Because have you ever known Democrat ideology to cut a budget? Hey, we need to cut all these expenses. We need to cut this down because we've only got so much revenue coming in. We need to cut this down. Oh, hell no. Hell no. Just doesn't happen. Certainly won't happen here in shenanigan-laden Washington state. Certainly won't happen in Seattle with Katie Wilson, our new beloved socialist mayor. You know what I mean? She's out there literally protesting against Starbucks, one of our main employers, started here in Seattle. You want to talk about absolutely taking a revolver out and just shooting yourself in the foot. It's mind-blowing, the things that we have happening. And then what's so funny is you have people that are interviewed. I've got some concern. I have concern about our... Yeah, right. Well, how'd you vote the last 40 effing years? Well, a good Washington state resident. I voted Democrat because, for the people. How's that working out for you? You going to be able to afford to retire in Washington state? Death by 1,000 paper cuts. That was a really, really good comment. Really good statement. Because that's what's going on. Getting hit from so many different angles. And that's the progressive playbook, right? Tax everybody for everything and it'll work out. Because, socialist utopia always happens. All right. This story isn't going anywhere but on. So make sure you're subscribed, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks again for joining. Bye for now.